Hello everyone, I'm Alexandra August.
I am Johnny Kolasinski.
And welcome to the DiscoTrek, a Star Trek Discovery podcast. You can find us on Twitter at the DiscoTrek.
And on Facebook at facebook.com/thediscotrek.
This week, we are a Star Trek Discovery recap podcast. Normally we come at you Fridays, right after the newest episode of Star Trek Discovery has aired on CBS All Access Thursday nights. But there was WonderCon this weekend, and we thought we'd be able to record there. We weren't, because we drank margaritas instead. Sorry. So we're coming at you now with... Not sorry at all. I'm coming at you now with a belated discussion of Season 2, Episode 11, Perpetual Infinity.
Yeah. So Alexandra and I were both at WonderCon this weekend. Not much Trek news came out of it. I got the chance to catch the VFX panel discussion with various members of the VFX team, and nothing new. No, it was very much like a behind-the-scenes featurette as opposed to exposure to new facts. It was interesting, but I didn't rush home to spread the word.
Yeah, probably more of a niche topic. I don't find myself particularly interested in the behind-the-scenes stuff, specifically as it relates to effects, just because I don't really have a background that allows me to appreciate it.
Mm-hmm.
But I think I was kind of surprised overall that there wasn't more Star Trek content at WonderCon, considering WonderCon is, 45 minutes south of Los Angeles, where, a lot of these shows' producers are. A lot of everybody involved with that show is certainly there. They had just done Paley Fest to Los Angeles the previous weekend, but WonderCon is a pretty TV heavy convention, and it's also the middle, it's right before the end of the season. So I was a little bit, it wasn't a horrible thing. I didn't really go there for disco content, but I thought it was kind of interesting.
Yeah,
I have more of a presence.
I was disappointed in the lack of it, just because, like you said, this is probably the first major con we got while the show was airing.
That's true.
And there was no there was no headlining content there. And I honestly was, as a convention, I really liked WonderCon. I had more fun at WonderCon than I do at San Diego Comic-Con. I think because I'm the kind of fan who wants to go and see five nerds like me talk about how they made their Stargate costumes, as opposed to go see a Hall H panel.
Yeah, as opposed to go see more Star Trek Discovery, and what's basically Star Trek in concert almost. Star Trek Live. San Diego's we talked about this a lot this weekend. Folks, if you're in Southern California and you like going to conventions and you haven't been to WonderCon, it's run by the same organization as Comic-Con, but it is a little baby con in comparison.
Only 70,000 people.
But the Anaheim Convention Center is newly remodeled and is massive. So it's such a more fluid event. You don't feel like you're crammed. It's not quite as hot because it's usually held in early April, end of March, as it was this year. It's just a little bit more ergonomic, I guess, for lack of a better word. The star power is not quite the same.
Which again surprises me. Although they were competing with PAX as well, which means that a lot of outlets that deal with both gaming and genre television were pulled in two directions. Yeah.
So, if you care for our con recommendations, I still love SDCC. I love the massive festival nature of it, but it's nice that WonderCon is a convention that allows you to really sort of lean back and be a fan, as opposed to sort of like in crazy con mode, needing to get everywhere and, fighting crowds and, spending half your con in line. WonderCon is not that. It's smaller, and it is definitely more of it's more of a fan convention and way less of a junket, which Comic-Con has essentially become, for better or for worse.
Yeah. I would say the biggest single anecdote that is the difference between WonderCon and Comic-Con is Phil LaMarr from Futurama, the voice actor, was just going to panels. Mm-hmm. Just going, sitting and watching.
Like a human person.
Like a human being.
That you could just walk up to and touch and talk. Not that you should walk up to Phil LaMarr and touch him without preamble, but...
Yeah. Exactly.
Johnny actually moderated a panel.
Yep. Which Phil LaMarr did not see. but I moderated a panel on. I do a regular panel on making a living, being creative, and did this one specifically focused on animation, and it was a heck of a lot of fun. Lee Cozy, who's a licensed Star Wars artist, is the guy who puts the panel together for us every year. And I did that along with Rolene Lee, who's a director or a producer rather, at DreamWorks, and Aaron Waltke, who's a writer on Troll Hunters and Wizards on Netflix, Guillermo del Toro's shows, and Unikitty, the offshoot of the Lego movie. It was a lot of fun.
Yeah, that's always a really, really good panel. I actually pinch hit and moderated it last year. I think it was last year at WonderCon.
Yeah, last year at WonderCon.
And I've also been to the panel. I went to an SDCC one, and even as somebody who's not a visual artist, it was very interesting and very informative. And I found myself kind of inspired to I don't know, start a DeviantArt page or something. I haven't, I probably won't, but it was really interesting. It's they always get a really interesting panel of experts who are all very good at communicating tips, tricks, why they do what they do, why they love what they do. It's interesting. Yeah, one of the more educational.
Yep, this one we're hopefully going to have it at Comic-Con as well, San Diego Comic-Con, and possibly go with a writing focus, or possibly go with animation again.
Oh, that'll be interesting. I'll be excited to hear more about that.
Anyway, let's talk about Star Trek, because that's what people are paying the big bucks for.
Yeah, so this was Perpetual Infinity, follow-up to last week's The Red Angel, which we actually differed on.
Spoilers, is mom.
Yeah, spoilers. Mrs. Burnham. Gabrielle is her name. And Perpetual Infinity revisited this and basically introduced us to Burnham's mother, who has been pretty hardened by the time she has spent traveling back in time, back and forth through time, attempting to thwart Control's eventual destiny to wipe out all sentient / organic life in the universe. She basically traces their genesis back to them discovering the sphere and getting the knowledge on AI that it contains. So she's been trying to destroy the sphere for ages, but she hasn't been able to. And she finally at some point found, and it's problematic for her to keep traveling because she's like, I didn't quite understand all the timey-wimey stuff, but basically because she's a center point. She's anchored 950 years in the future, so when she travels back in time, she can't stay there very long, and no one can really perceive her except for Spock due to his dyslexia.
Space dyslexia.
Yeah, exactly. So that's why she gets through to Spock when she sees Burnham, because she goes back in time and she looks at many of Burnham's milestones, and she notices that Burnham runs off into the Vulcan Forge, manages to warn Spock, and then later gets through to him to inform him of the Red Angel's plans in the hopes that he can somehow help.
Control's plans.
Yeah, pardon me. Control's plans in the hopes that he can somehow help. And when Discovery traps her back on Esau, I think I said it was Esau last week, and it wasn't. It's Esau 4 Prime or whatever. And Pike traps her there. She is pretty indignant about it because she insists that Discovery cannot help, and that she's losing time. She needs to get back to work and affecting Control because she's, tired of seeing her when she loves dies. And meanwhile, Leland gets assimilated.
Yeah.
By Control, and uses Control, which needs, in order to more effectively imitate and fool people, it needs an actual human form as opposed to just impersonating humanoids via hologram, because it specifically says it's kind of just missing something special that makes humans. So it inserts itself via nanotechnology. I'm not sure if that's exactly what it was, but it kind of seemed like it. And now is operating Leland. Yeah. Leland is effectively Locutus, and we'll get to our feelings about that later in the episode. If you're interested in a really fun article about that, my friend Dusty Stowe at Screen Rant wrote a great piece about that is just becoming very controversial about how Control could eventually result in the Borg origins, or if Discovery is going to do that. So if you're interested in a read, check out Screen Rant's Star Trek Discovery page.
So overall, ignoring the canon aspects, thoughts on the episode?
I don't know if it was just I watched this twice because the first time I watched it Thursday night, I was drinking wine because it's my birthday. So I didn't retain much. So I watched it again tonight, and I don't know if it was just coming off of my intense frustration at the sort of info dump nature of the Red Angel and how that really stepped on what could have been an excellent twist. Mm-hmm. But I really enjoyed this.
I really enjoyed it as well. I think that they did a very... they told Gabrielle's story as effectively as they did Ariam's.
I would say even more so because I feel like she had an arc.
Yeah, she had an arc and it had stakes.
Exactly.
Because she wasn't just bridge officer number 4.
Well, and even we got bits and pieces of, I harp on this a little bit, but we got bits and pieces of Ariam's backstory, and we saw some of her memories just as we get a pretty detailed flashback of the Burnham family before the attack on the Klingon attack on Doctoria Alpha. And we just see a progression, a very marked progression between the woman we meet, between the Gabrielle that we meet before and the Gabrielle that we meet in the present. And that to me was enough really to give her just a really strong backstory that made me invested. Not to mention Sonia Sohn, whom you'll know from The Wire, Kima Gruggs, and a bunch of other stuff. She and Sonequa just did some beautiful work.
It was phenomenal. I think that I would have been equally happy with her being the villain, the unwitting villain. I thought there was a non-zero chance that we'd go there, or not unwitting, but
just somebody who'd been corrupted by her.
Not even corrupted, just the only option to save humanity is to do some dark, nasty shit.
Which kind of would have spoken to sort of a Section 31's sort of the wider themes surrounding Section 31 and then the question, just sort of wrestling with with those values. When do you draw the line between, sacrificing one thing to save for the greater good? Who defines that? Who makes those choices?
Yeah, I think if we're going to see, I have a feeling this episode, unless there's something stronger coming in the next couple of weeks, this is going to be the for your consideration episode for a lot of the Emmy nods for Discovery, especially for Sonequa Martin Green.
I almost tweeted about this, but then it just felt really self-promotional and gross. But there was something very specific, and it might have just been me because I've experienced this directly, but there was something very significant and subtle a point that was made about specifically early parental loss. So Sonequa, so Michael Burnham loses her mom at age 10, which is the same age actually that I lost my dad. And my experience of that was, at first very much when you're young, at least my experience, I just wished and wished and wished for him to come back. And that's, I just wished and hoped and just, beyond all logic was maybe something happened. Maybe he's a spy. Maybe, he faked, or I don't know. But and then as I got older and had a very good support system, eventually, the grief subsides, and I kind of started wishing he was just around for regular events and just missing him in a more, general way. And then a few years ago, I kind of realized something really sad. I think it might have been around the anniversary of his death, something really final, that even if he did come back today, if he walked through the door today, it really wouldn't erase all of the pain and all of the trauma, and there's really no there's no fixing that wrong. There's no fixing that problem. I don't know if you've experienced the same thing or those feelings.
I mean, not obviously to the same extent because I was 23 as opposed to 10 years old. But yeah, absolute, 25. But absolutely. And I was thinking about you when I was watching the episode.
Oh.
Because I knew it would be something that would hit home very hard for you.
Yeah, and it was...
this might end up a very special episode of DiscoTrek, guys.
I in particular, just because the range of emotions on her face when she wakes up in sickbay and finds out that her mother's alive, I just kind of latched onto the hope of that and the oh my God, and how she just desperately wants to see her and nothing else matters. And then she has to reckon with the fact that her mom doesn't want to see her and the level of disappointment and confusion that's there. and how they have to come to this isn't like, this isn't a blindly joyful reunion, I guess is the point I was trying to make. Like as much as again, if my dad wandered back, I couldn't get past when I was thinking about this whenever I did a couple of years ago or whenever it was, that if my dad walked through the door of my apartment, there would be no excusing him for leaving me and or leaving me and my little brother. And even though I'd be happy to have him back, like there would be so much darkness associated with that. And that just kind of broke my heart all over again, watching Sonequa wrestle with this huge level of disappointment. At first, I'm very glad that they kind of, come to a conclusion and find a way to have a relationship as adults, even under these crazy circumstances. But I thought Sonequa played that beautifully. And it really, I feel like very eloquently expressed something that I don't really think I've seen explored on television beyond like, crazy genre stuff of like parents actually like faking deaths and coming back to life. So that was very elegant.
Yeah. I'll say that from a writing standpoint, the resolution of essentially Gabrielle saying, "Oh, I was there for all the important moments. You just didn't see me," could have been incredibly hackneyed feeling. And instead was like a gut punch of goodness.
Yeah. I agree.
That was, that could have been very clumsy, and it was not. Overall, I think that this is possibly the best for two different reasons, in my opinion. This episode and Magic to Make the Sanest Man Go Mad are the two best episodes of science fiction we've gotten in Discovery so far.
Yeah, I would. I haven't really gone over my head and thought about the episodes, but I will point out that one of the things that I enjoyed was the technobabble for once this week. Was really interesting when we got that scene with Pike, Stamets, Burnham, and Spock and Tilly all trying to figure out how to keep Burnham's mother there while at the same time sending the sphere data away and using the suit as a vehicle for it. That I'm with you. And then also at the same time doing that thing that science fiction does so beautifully, which is sort of wrap up a nugget of something that's very relevant and very grounded in this pretty science fiction package. Because now that we're talking about it, it feels like the Red Angel is even more of a metaphor for an angel, a guardian angel.
Yeah.
Because that's effectively what Gabrielle has been. And there's so much spirituality in that. Without it being codified into a religion.
And at the same time, it was very much an episode about how duty can harden you.
Very much so.
Where Gabrielle, at this point, it's not that she absolutely still cares for Michael to the same extent that she did, but she cannot. But the only thing she can do to show that care is do her job.
Yeah. Exactly. And she can't be emotional about it or else she'll be lost. Oh, God, the loneliness of her existence was enough to just make me weep.
Yeah, absolutely.
Oh, and really, really just a wonderful creation of a character, and how she reminded me a bit of Cisco now that we're talking about it.
That was, I think, when you and I Facebook messaged back and forth about it, it was the Visitor and I don't care because it was that good. Well, the Visitor being the Deep Space Nine episode where Cisco gets pulled out of time and Jake lives his entire life trying to get him back.
Yeah, people really were like, this was the Visitor. I think it bore some strong similarities, but...
it was a similar device.
Yeah, and interestingly, I'm happy to forgive Discovery for that. Just, I don't know if it was just eclipsed by the Borg stuff this week, but I feel like that is something that I don't mind... Discovery playing with ideas in Trek, because I mean there's just so many that they're bound to recycle them, and I thought this was a really elegant execution. So most people compared it to the Visitor favorably.
Derivative.
No, it was not derivative. I think most people compared it to the Visitor favorably, but I think I'm a little bit on guard of people being like, oh, it was just like that, just because Discovery is ripping off the Discovery has ripped off things
Mm-hmm.
And I say that, I don't mean, I know it has probably a more negative connotation than I mean, but I'm not necessarily saying that as a compliment. I'm definitely not saying it as a compliment, because I think that, I've sung this tune before, but I would like us to play in a more original sandbox.
Yeah.
But I don't, in this case, I could see this story just growing organically out of season 2, or somebody being like, The Visitor's my favorite episode of Deep Space Nine, and I feel like we can utilize a similar device and almost pay homage to it.
Yeah. I feel like the stakes in this episode were higher than The Visitor because they weren't just working towards bringing Sisko or bringing Gabrielle home.
Mm-hmm. It was the big picture and how, like, you have to let go of things.
And the fact,
attachments.
like, I thought there was the potential that one of the things we were going to see was a montage of Burnham deaths. The various times that Gabrielle let Burnham die so that she could go back and fix something and stop it from happening. Because she said she's seen her die countless times. And she'll see it again.
Yeah, just the pathos of that and how haunted she is was so well rendered. Thanks, guys. This was good.
Yeah.
I also kind of like how we see Gabrielle as this woman. We see her as a parallel to Georgiou. I loved that scene between the two of them. I still am frustrated a little bit with how, and I get to be less so as Georgiou finally solidifies into a character that is not all over the place. But I'm still a little bit, I feel like she should be more sophisticated and savvy for an emperor. And when I say that, I mean, I don't know, she feels a little bit too sentimental, which is weird considering she worked so hard not to be. But I really did like the scene between the two of them, where this is the one time I think I've seen Georgiou on screen where she looks just a little
Just Georgiou.
Georgiou on, just Georgiou on screen.
Emperor Georgiou.
What?
Emperor Georgiou as opposed to Captain Georgiou.
Yeah. This is the first time that we've seen Emperor Georgiou on screen where she looks just a little bit intimidated for the first time.
Mm-hmm.
They even, like, the way they even place them, the way they shot them, we have, Gabrielle on this sort of dais and untouchable, basically inaccessible to Georgiou. She cannot be corrupted by Georgiou. She cannot be manipulated by her. Leland's they kind of painted it with a brush, with Leland essentially saying, like, you're number 2 all of a sudden, and you don't like that. So I thought that was really juicy to me, those two meeting.
I can't remember if it's a conversation I had on the podcast here or one that I had just with my wife Katie, but I think the development of Emperor Georgiou is fascinating to me because what we're seeing is her, for the first time, starting to have a relationship where there's not a hidden dagger, where she knows that if Burnham is going to come at her, she's going to come at her from the front, because she crossed a line, and not because of a power struggle, and the nasty mustache twirlingness of the Terran universe.
Yeah, I loved how just utterly unintimidated and unfazed she is by Georgiou, because she's like, I've seen you. She kind of has her number, and I thought that was just a wonderful dynamic that even when Georgiou was in a room with Cornwell, she just, like, was out of fucks.
Yeah.
And God knows she doesn't give a shit about Leland. Even though now he's now much more of a... I wanted to mention, like, how much I like this version of Leland, because I feel like he's finally become, merging with Control, the villain this season has needed.
Mm-hmm.
We really needed someone, I think, to focus the energy and intention of Control into one being and coalesce that. And so, again, as I said, as frustrated as I am with this potential Borg relationship, I thought it did wonders for that character, because I was kind of exhausted of him being as ridiculously incompetent as he was.
Yeah, of his being the worn down black ops, gray ops.
Yeah, super conflicted, but to the point of inefficacy. Like, I just didn't buy that he kept his job that long.
Yeah.
And Section 3, like, and again, like, it's just sort of, I feel like my complaint about this season remains that they're punching down in terms of Star Trek Starfleet's intellect and ability. And I think Section 31's been a very good example of that. Because they're more effective in Enterprise. They're obviously more effective in Dastardly and Deep Space Nine. And so that was just kind of another thing about this version of Section 31 that I was kind of raising an eyebrow at, which I'm to the point now where the show has earned enough of my trust that I'm not going to sit here and wag my finger at it. We've talked this to death, but yeah, that was another part of it.
Yeah. I hope that this is not a Borg origin story, and that if anything, what we learn is it's simply because I don't need the Borg wrapped up with a tidy little bow.
I don't need the Borg on Discovery.
No.
At all.
We also didn't need them on Enterprise.
I honestly didn't need as much of them as I got on Voyager. I remain a little bit, one of my many complaints about Endgame, and trust me, everything's secondary to Chakotay and Seven, but one of my many complaints about that episode was that I'm like, really? It all comes down to Janeway and the Borg Queen again. Mm-hmm. This is not how this show began. But it's now the Borg Queen are the Borg are this kind of like inextricable element in Voyager's getting home. And I just was like, can we not?
Yeah.
But, I kind of want to unpack that a little bit because we'll go into sort of, if you haven't seen the episode or weren't as, plugged into it and didn't quite catch the Borg.
If you haven't seen the episode and you're this far into this episode of the DiscoTrek, like I'm kind of impressed with you.
Thank you.
I'm not even mad.
I know. Well, also, and so basically, and then I kind of want to discuss if this is a Borg origin story, ways that it could work, or just ways that they would break it out. So first, I wrote a little piece last week that was just like a mini feature for Screen Rant that was Control is basically a bodiless Borg.
Mm-hmm.
Because, and it was almost in jest, just because I kept noticing these sort of naked, like almost visual homages to them. The sort of red eyepiece, the idea.
On Arium. Yeah.
On air, well, yeah, and just sort of all that when Leland gets sort of like knocked out or whatever, it's a laser red eye thing, and it had like the needle pokes his eyeball just like it does to Picard in First Contact. That sort of infamous shot. Yep. They have similar goals.
Yep. The looking back, the four admirals via hologram speaking essentially as one.
And also and this is again just kind of like the tentacles on the future probe.
Yep.
Inserting into like, downloading Discovery's computer and, using it and using Arium as a vessel. All of that was just very stylistically referential to the Borg, to the point where like I made a joke about it and it turned into this article. And then this week it was like somebody had been listening and was like, just you wait. It was, we get Leland, who is effectively assimilated by the Borg, by Control, who insert themselves into his brain via whatever. So he becomes essentially a cybernetic being. He's got to hide his gray veins from Giorgio. He is bald. He is their representative. They even say when he says he doesn't want to do this that he's his own man, and he really harps on his individuality. What do they say, Johnny?
What is it is useless?
Struggle is useless.
Struggle is useless. It's thesaurus. The first thing they downloaded from that sphere was a thesaurus.
Yep. Stands for resistance. It's futile. So it seems, I think it's frustrating to both of us, and correct me if I'm wrong, that it seems like there's no way anyone in that writer's room would have created this without knowing the direct connection, or not direct, without knowing the exceedingly naked connections to the Borg as a species.
Yeah.
It seems...
It's obviously a conscious choice.
Exactly. Okay, yeah. It's obviously a conscious choice. And the thing is, if it's a conscious choice, the choice, like, the outcomes that we can expect, there's only two. There are only two.
One is that it's a Borg origin story.
Mm-hmm. We're somehow going to relate to them.
Yep. And the other is that it's total head fake.
Yeah. Neither of which are particularly appealing to me, to be perfectly honest.
The way it could work for me, and this is me saying this now, and happy to be proven wrong in the next couple weeks, is if it's not a Borg origin story, but it's as Control, I know that the Borg were effective, and I am taking this information from a villain in the future, from it.
Or just, I mean, you'd think the Sphere probably has data on them.
The Sphere or Control 850 years from now has data of all of the various interactions the Federation had, going all the way. Like, it's kind of reminiscent of the drone in Voyager, the 29th century, or the drone that assimilated 29th century technology.
Oh my god, I loved him so much.
Yeah.
When he's dying on the thing, and Seven's like, "No, I don't want you to," and he says, "You will adapt." That was the guy who played the Nazi in the Hirogen episodes.
I didn't know that.
Huh.
So I could see it as Control taking a tip from the Borg, saying, "Hey, a great way to destroy the Federation is do this, but 120 years earlier."
Well, actually, Dusty brought up an interesting point in his own article, which is that I don't know if I'm going to parse it right, but correctly, but essentially, this would, if Control eventually becomes the Borg, if by the idea, I think his premise was that essentially what they would do is send Control, shoot Control back into time, and somehow Control finds a way to survive by merging with an organic species, blah blah blah. That was what I had thought as well. I hadn't really thought too much else about it, but that means what they do in First Contact by attempting to stop First Contact and make humans a much easier assimilation target.
They would keep themselves from developing. That's yeah.
Exactly. And he pointed out, and I kind of agree, that it's possible that they just didn't, that the Borg, their own origin was kind of lost to them. That makes perfect sense to me that, in sort of the hubbub of becoming this incredibly crazy hive mind, a few things got lost in the shuffle.
Yep.
Nobody's perfect. No? Borg perfection joke didn't land? Okay. And so so a possibility, but somebody, when we did a Disco Nights, I also guest on Chase Masterson's Disco Nights podcast, because I can't get enough of talking about Discovery, and we had Anthony Pascal on our panel at WonderCon on Friday. He is the Tony behind TrekMovie.com, and he pointed out that the Borg and Control are not the same. They actually differ pretty wildly in the sense that the Borg have an appreciation for organic life. And I wanted to ask you about this and let me know what you think, because I'm asking you.
That's actually a really good point.
Well, but okay, so this is my thought to that. That we're going to see Control inhabiting Leland begins to appreciate sentient life in some capacity and appreciates the advantages that they have by merging merging tech with organic life, or merging artificial and organic life. And maybe that's how the Borg get whatever started. Again, we have to solve the problem of him going back in time to do it, but put a pin in that. But I think if the Borg were faced with if you showed the Borg perfection and said perfection does not involve organic life, I think they would figure out a way around it and get rid of, and eventually seek to eliminate the organic sides. I think if you could show them how it was more efficient to be completely an artificial life form as opposed to a cybernetic life form, I feel like they would go for that, because they're constantly and trying to achieve a state of perfection. Would love to hear everyone's thoughts on that, if you're curious, if you have. So what do you think? So,
I think that I could see like the Borg getting to the point where they've gone past adding biological distinctiveness because they've got all the various.
Or they figure out a way to upload consciousness
Mm-hmm.
without taking the organic matter with them.
Right. And once they get to that point, I mean, screw it. Let's just send. We know that they've had time travel technology as far back as First Contact. Or as far forward as First Contact. It's getting wibbly wobbly.
Right.
Well, now that we've got ourselves small enough to dance on the head of a pin, let's just send ourselves straight back to the Big Bang. It could be that their approach to their method of doing their method of time travel is more of a Kelvinverse method, where if they're going to change things that abruptly, they know that they're going to be rebooting as opposed to replacing.
Wait, say that again. Sorry.
So the difference between 2009 J.J. Abrams Star Trek and the original series is that Nero's time travel was different in some way from the time travel we generally see in Star Trek, and it actually changed things so that the universe is forked rather than replaced.
Right. Yeah.
So that might be the way things are going. I did, and this is something I didn't realize until the VFX panel, when Spock is shown the various planets being eradicated in the Federation, we go through that red wormhole that sends that is sending Gabrielle back.
Okay, explain to me the relevance of this.
I don't know what the relevance is yet, but so we see Earth and then Vulcan and then Andoria and all the planets of the Federation destroyed one by one, and as we go from planet to planet to planet, it's going through that red wormhole that is that is Gabrielle's time travel. I just find it interesting.
Yeah, that is really interesting.
We also know that Gabrielle didn't create the signals.
Okay, so this is another. I don't know if you interpreted this the way I did, but it seemed to me that she, the lady doth protest a little bit too much, if we're going to quote Hamlet this week. Which was a great moment. Anytime, yes. Hell yeah to Hamlet quote. Oh yeah, just fucking brilliant exchange. Frame that hanging on my wall. The idea that I just lost my train of thought. What was I saying?
The lady doth protest too much.
Yeah, just immediately Pike was like, the 7 signals. She's like, I don't know what those are. And he's like, but she's like, I don't know what those are at all. End of discussion. It seemed to me that she knew more than she was letting on. But I rewatched it again, and that I could now see that maybe it. Okay, I'm 50-50 on that. I think that she knows more than she's willing to let on, for whatever reason. We'll see. But I'm intrigued by that idea.
I don't think that that's her style. I think her style is not to say, I don't know about that. Her style would be to say, I'm not talking about that.
Well, unless she's protecting Michael in some capacity.
I think she'd still. I think that she's.
Unless that knowledge would maybe she's seen. I don't know. Like maybe that knowledge would induce Michael to do something or try and save her. So I don't know. Maybe she's seen her own death, and she doesn't want Michael to stop it.
Or maybe the red signals are third time traveler, and the third time traveler is Michael.
Ugh. So much Michael.
Yep. And that brings me to the one. This isn't a flaw in the episode, and it's something, but it's been my feelings this whole season, and I've brought it up before. But the universe is getting smaller and smaller and smaller.
Oh my god! Yeah,
everything relates to Michael Burnham, or Section 31, or Ash Tyler, or Philip or Giorgio. it's like we're in the little bubble universe from where everyone's disappearing around Beverly.
Yeah. Oh god, that was a creepy episode.
Yeah. It's still April Fool's Day. I might post that in r/Daystreamers too.
Oh, it's April Fool's Day, which meant we should have mentioned that instead of Sub Rosa. But I dropped a Sub Rosa reference on our Disco Nights panel. FYI, we were straight repping.
It's branching out, hitting the big time.
Yeah. So, yeah, I'm with you. I don't know what's to be done about that. I kind of feel like I'm shaking my fist in the wind whenever I make that point. I was speaking about this with Damien last week, who guested on the Red Angel and our discussion of the Red Angel, and I kind of made the conjecture that Star Trek Discovery is kind of consigned to having a smaller universe because it's so serialized that we don't get those episodic moments in Star Trek where, like, every week, it's a new alien, it's a new civilization. There, people are cropping up all over the place. Admirals are guest starring. Ensigns are coming on and off. They are focused so heavily on these certain people on the crew that we're not getting all these little offshoots the way we used to. But then Damien made the point of, like, how heavily serialized Game of Thrones is, and that universe is huge.
Mm-hmm.
But my response to that, I think just in my head, because I didn't really mention it on the episode, is that, this is Star Trek Discovery and it's set on this ship. And so it's not like we can, it's not like there's Essos and Dorne and all these different kingdoms and places where they can anchor shows. The only other storyline they had was the Klingon storyline. And that doesn't really, for a show that's supposed to be about a particular journey of a woman on a particular ship, I think they've sort of handcuffed themselves a little bit.
Yeah.
And I don't know. Yeah, I don't know how you get around that. I also don't know how you get around the idea of having a Defense Against the Dark Arts type situation with the captains. Because this show's about Michael Burnham. And when you have a stationary captain on a starship, it's tough for the focus not to be on the leader. And the thing is, if the focus isn't going to be on the leader, there has to be a reason for the focus to be on Michael Burnham. And I feel like that's why they've made her the center of this universe, because she's the lead of the show and they have to. I don't know if I'm talking in circles, but I feel that frustration. I'm just sort of at a loss for how to remedy that.
So I'm going to preface this by saying that I'm watching Brooklyn Nine-Nine for the first time, and it's phenomenal. But Brooklyn Nine-Nine is a show about Detective Jake Peralta that has a captain.
Good point, yeah.
NYPD Blue was a show about detectives that had a captain.
So is SVU.
SVU. Scrubs is a show about residents that has attendings, and there is nothing that says it has to be the show about the captain, and that all of the decision that the captain is only the lead because the captain has been the lead.
Well, also too because the captain kind of controls where the ship goes and what goes on in the ship.
Yes, the captain controls what goes on in the ship, but the captain doesn't control what happens to the ship. And it's one of the reasons that Trek worked so well is because it wasn't the show about the captain. Because it was truly ensemble. This show isn't truly ensemble yet. And that means that we didn't always get the answers from Picard or from Sisko or from Janeway.
No.
We always get the answers from Burnham.
Yeah.
Because it is less of an ensemble show.
Yeah. And I don't know. I'm just kind of yeah, I'm still wrestling with that.
Yeah.
I think.
I don't know. I really, really, really felt early on this season that we were moving away from that, and we moved away from it for until Saru got his groove back, and then we leaned heavily into it with Project Daedalus and the Red Angel, and now Perpetual Infinity.
Yeah, it's just a lot. It's a lot of focus on her, and Sneak was doing such a marvelous job of carrying the show. I said that
this is not a knock. It's not even a knock on the show.
Not really. Yeah, I think it's just. I think it's maybe us just coming to terms with the fact that like this is the thing. Like, I was really excited to see Star Trek kind of launch into the modern TV era. And I think it's definitely done that very well. But this is something that I do miss about the TNG, the Burnham Braga era, was that universe was just so big.
Yeah.
And
instead we're getting Breaking Bad, which was not a big universe, but was
very gripping.
But was very, very gripping stories about a small number of people.
Well, and you know what I also noticed too, and I think this is just because they keep trying to do so much in every single episode, I feel like everyone's getting a lot of attention, but it's so scattered. Mm-hmm. This is why I wanted, Hugh Culber to have his own episode, because it doesn't feel like it's paying enough. The show doesn't feel like it's paying enough attention to his arc, and the same could be said of everyone on that ship. So,
because when he bounces, because he's getting attention, but he's getting 20 minutes of screen time in
every 3 episodes.
Instead of 48 minutes of screen time in one, or 6 minutes of screen time in 7 episods.
Yeah, and I think that's also just by virtue of the fact that this is a 13-episode, 14-episode season.
Yep.
And you don't have, like, they had a lot of space to fill in a network, 22, 26-episode season like the 4 Middle Treks had. There was a lot of time to kill. And they were able to do these great ensemble episodes, but they were also able to do episodes that where you just didn't see through the character. You didn't see through the cast members because it was only about Data, or it was only about Garrick, or it was only about Neelix. Whew, those were tough ones. But God bless Ethan Phillips.
Like, it's weird to think about as we're getting, and we are incredibly nitpicky and critical about things like that. But if we're going by sheer hours of television, we're still not through TNG season 1 yet.
Yeah, I know, just to put things in perspective for you. And like, I think we're critical of this show because it's our job to be, our self-given volunteer job.
Yeah.
And it's, it's something that we really care about. It's very important to us. And we're also, I think Johnny and I, despite how much we like Discovery and how supportive we've been of it and continue to be, and how optimistic we are about it, I think we're still wrestling with it. We're Star Trek fans like everybody else, and we are still wrestling with the fact that, I don't mean to speak for you, but at least I'm still wrestling with the fact that this is Star Trek that is very different than what I'm used to, and I'm certainly open to it. But I think just for me to, and feel free to chime in on this if you feel the same, but like for me to really sort of feel like I'm giving my honest point of view, I have to face and kind of chew on the things I don't like, and the things that are making me kind of, squint my eyes and frustrate me, for lack of a better word.
I don't feel like I need to. I'm not. I don't think I'm having quite the same challenges. I think that when I'm frustrated with something, it's not because it's not the Trek I'm used to. It's because I don't quite see how they got.
Because it's not good?
It's not even that it's not good.
Yeah, not Discovery as a whole. Just sorry, parts of the things that we. Yeah,
no.
Okay, sorry, go on.
Like it's not even that it's not good. It's because it's a choice I don't understand.
Oh yeah.
Which is a different than it being a choice that is not good or bad. I don't have a problem with the fact that the Orville also seems like a very small show.
Yeah.
because I kind of understand what they're trying to do, why they're doing it that way, I guess.
Yeah, I would say it's bought. I think, yeah, it just feels, Discovery feels kind of one note at the moment.
Mm-hmm.
And, you know, it feels like it's got to, like, yeah, I don't know. So I kind of, and again, I think I said this over and over again. I just want to get out of the original series, sandbox, like figure out a way to discover something new. Stop having, like, forcing them to deal with all this prequel detritus. It's just, I'm not into it, but I feel like, but I will say that, like, you know, the production value and the talent of this show is really saving it for me and really is dragging me back every single week. And just loving Star Trek, period, because it still very much exemplifies that. And I think for the Orville, correct me if I'm wrong, because I haven't watched a ton of it, but I feel like the Orville is making all of the jokes we desperately wanted TNG to poke fun at itself.
No, I don't think so.
Well, no, I just mean, like, I feel like, I'm not saying that's the one thing that saves it. I think that, like, it's almost a relief for me watching that show, because I'm like, oh my god, finally somebody played with the holodeck and, like, was an actual kid with it and did what we would all want to do in the holodeck, which is, like, make people do wacky shit, as opposed to just, you know, like, playing out Sherlock Holmes mysteries or Dixon Hill mysteries or making out with crew members. I don't know. So
I do want. This is the 26th episode. This was the 26th episode of Discovery. You know what the 26th episode of TNG was?
What?
You remember the neutral zone when they thought out people from the 80s?
Oh, I liked that episode.
Okay.
When the oil baron comes on and he's like,
yeah.
he's lying.
Yeah.
I thought that was.
Okay,
I mean,
okay.
I don't know. I wasn't mad at that episode. I'm generally not mad at, like, the first couple of seasons of TNG. I think they get a bad rap. I think they're definitely not great, but I don't think they're. I think people are getting a little bit. What's the word I'm looking for? Hyperbolic and ragging on them. But
code of honor. I'm just saying, like, we are just so far above where any other Star Trek was at this point in the series.
Yeah, 100%.
Even if you want to go with towards the end of season 2, we're just about to get to the point where Riker gets the clip show virus.
Oh my god, I remember that episode.
Shades of Grey.
I was like, wow, guys. I caught that a couple of weeks ago. I think I was just I had season 2 on in the background, and I think I came back because it was that famous, like, Irish girl scene where she takes off her skirt. And she's like, do you not like girls? I see. Is there a technique to this foot washing thing? Like, oh god, guys, this was the clip that you put in the clip show.
Yeah.
While his ex-girlfriend is listening in. This is gross. Yep. I think, I don't know, I feel pretty complete about this. Is there anything else you wanted to touch on?
No, I'm very interested in, I feel like we're so close to a resolution that the fact that there's 3 episodes left?
Technically, Tony Pascal was saying this, like, technically 2, because the last 2 episodes were, I think, 1 episode that got oversized, so they added a 14th episode kind of late in the game. Because initially, if you look at early news reports, this was only supposed to be a 13-episode season.
Yeah.
So, yeah, I'm into it. I'm really curious to see what happens. I desperately, desperately want for the 3rd season for them to just back off a little on the gas of picking 15 different storylines, all of which are out in 11. Like, Saru's whole body chemistry made up has makeup has changed. His people have undergone a huge revolution. Tyler...
And that was in 80 minutes of television.
Yeah. Tyler has a baby, a secret one that looks like it's about to be in danger next week, which I just feel like, again, it's tiny, tiny universe. If they make it all tie in, they make it all tie in. I'm just doubtful that they can do it without it feeling a little shoehorned. And then, too, we've got Pike and his lost love Vina and just being amazing, and Spock and his whole identity crisis, and Burnham just Burnhaming all over the place. Tilly is really the only person who hasn't had anything crazy. She's actually had a storyline early on with May that I thought was really compelling and not like a very special episode of Star Trek Discovery, whereas everybody else is in very special episode of Star Trek Discovery territory, and it's just a lot, and everybody feels really histrionic. Even though it's really, like I said, it's really well rendered. It's just, I feel like it's been at this constant state of 11.
Yeah. Tune in next week when Lieutenant Bryce has a heroin problem.
And dies.
And is replaced by the actor who played Lieutenant Bryce in the first season.
Oh my goodness. Justice for Ariam's episode.
Yeah. All right. So that's what I got for this week.
What is next week's episode? I don't know that there's a title for next week that's been released yet. I think would have
announced that it comes out in 3 days. It's gotta be. This is gonna be some good television, folks, as we both frantically Google.
It's pretty terrible. Oh, Through the Valley of Shadows. There's just no writer or director listed on YouTube, which is where I'm getting all of my very, very, very accurate information.
Because you know what we know about YouTube and Star Trek Discovery.
Always right.
Always right. That's why there is no second season of Star Trek Discovery.
So Through the Valley of Shadows, which is going to bring back Laurel, Tyler, and their bebe into the fold. And I hope this episode does not actually confirm that this kid is not the albino from DS9. I will be very disappointed. That is my favorite. I like that canon ref, that wink over there. So
yeah, apparently, no joke. Even Wikipedia says no. Maybe nobody directed this one.
Maybe
did we get both Frakes episodes?
A community episode, a community effort.
Oh yeah, we got both Frakes episodes, so it's not going to be Frakes. I don't know. Yeah. I think that if it was Tunde Asensani that we would have seen some of it in his panel. So who knows? Also, guys, I directed this week's episode of Star Trek Discovery.
Prove us wrong.
Written by Alexandra August.
Prove us wrong. So we will be back next week on the 4th. We'll special guest star Dr. Trek. Larry Nemeczek will be guesting this April 4th when we record, and we will release April 5th. We promise.
Yep, it's going to happen.
Yep. Sorry, thank you for the wait on this one. We just, conventions distract us. We have too much fun. And yes, we'll be back. Hit us up at the DiscoTrek or facebook.com/the DiscoTrek with comments, questions, concerns. Please, if you will tell one person about this podcast, just one person, your friend maybe who is like watching Star Trek Discovery but not getting the full experience because they aren't listening to a podcast. Yeah.
No fear telling me.
And if you are find yourself within range of iTunes/Stitcher and there's a keyboard, maybe you drop us a review.
Yeah, we'd appreciate that.
Maybe it's a good one. Maybe it's a 4 to 5 star review. Think about it. Think about it. Maybe that'll happen.
Thanks, folks, for listening.
Yep, we'll see you, hear you,
Friday morning
with you. Yeah, in a few days.
Right. Bye, folks.